Read one book a day, and tonight we're diving into Persuasion. We are always persuaded as we grow up, pushed along by societal standards, the opinions of others, and the fear of the unknown. When we look back, we realize that the greatest regret is not failure, but what could have been. This book, Persuasion, is Jane Austen's last complete novel and also her most mature and gentle work. Without gorgeous rhetoric or dramatic conflicts, it uses the most delicate brushstrokes to depict the regrets and redemption of adulthood and to lay bare the struggles and awakening that each of us has experienced. It's perfect for this quiet night to accompany you in understanding the true meaning of following your heart. The protagonist of the story is Anne Elliot. She was born into a baronet's family. Her father, Sir Walter Elliot, was an extremely vain and profligate man who spent his entire life indulging in his title, appearance, and social dignity, never truly caring for his daughters. At home, Anne was like an invisible person. She lacked the willful arrogance of her elder sister Mary and the shrewdness of her younger sister Elizabeth. She was gentle, calm, and kind, but because she was not outgoing enough and did not meet the expectations of a noble lady in society at that time, she was often overlooked. What made her even more distinctive was that she had a clarity and sensitivity far beyond her years. She knew how to observe people's hearts and how to be considerate of others, but she never knew how to fight for herself. When she was 19, Anne met Captain Frederick Wentworth, a bright spot in her life. Wentworth was young, brave, and full of vitality. At that time, he was just a naval officer with little wealth or prominent status, but he had a sincere and passionate heart. He was attracted by Anne's gentleness, intelligence, and kindness, and Anne was touched by his enthusiasm, courage, and the light in his eyes. The two young people soon fell in love and even secretly got engaged. During those days, Anne's heart was filled with joy. She thought she had found someone to spend her life with and that she could finally escape the indifference of her family and have happiness of her own. But this pure love could not withstand the prejudices of society and the persuasion of others. When Sir Walter Elliot learned of the engagement, he flew into a rage. In his eyes, Wentworth was of humble origin, had no enough wealth to support the dignity of the nobility, and was incompatible with the status of the Elliot family. Such a man was not worthy of marrying his daughter. The person who had the deepest influence on Anne was Lady Russell. Lady Russell was a close friend of Anne's mother, and after Anne's mother passed away, she took good care of Anne as her own daughter. Anne had always regarded her as the person she trusted most, her life mentor. Lady Russell was more rational than Sir Walter Elliot and more aware of the rules of society at that time. She earnestly persuaded Anne, "Anne, you are still too young to understand the cruelty of reality. Wentworth has nothing now, and naval life is full of uncertainty. If you go with him, you will only suffer hardships and ruin your life. You are a lady of the Elliot family. You deserve better, someone who can give you a stable life and match your status." During those days, Anne was torn apart inside. On one side was the person she loved deeply and the joyous expectations she held. On the other side was the persuasion of the person she trusted most, the eyes of society, and her father's opposition. By nature, she was gentle and not good at resisting. She was even more afraid that her choice would disappoint Lady Russell and bring shame to the family. She kept telling herself that Lady Russell was doing this for her own good, for her future. She kept convincing herself that love could not put food on the table and that real stability was the most important thing. She thought she might really be too young and impulsive, and that perhaps Lady Russell was right. Wentworth really could not give her the stability she wanted. So, after countless sleepless nights amid inner struggle and pain, Anne finally chose to compromise. She personally broke off her engagement with Wentworth and pushed away the man who had made her heart flutter. She thought she had made the right choice, and that time could heal all wounds. But she never expected that this regret would accompany her for 8 whole years. In those 8 years, Anne grew from a 19-year-old girl to a 27-year-old woman. In British society at that time, a 27-year-old woman who was still unmarried was already labelled an old maid and talked about by others, and Anne gradually became the person she least wanted to be. She became more silent and introverted. The light in her eyes gradually faded, and her smile became fewer and fewer. Every day, she navigated the trivialities of family and the hypocrisy of social life, taking care of her willful and complaining sister Mary, enduring her father's vanity and indifference, and catering to those relatives and friends who seemed decent but were actually hypocritical. Her life was plain, even oppressive. No surprises, no expectations, only endless melancholy and regret. She would often think of Wentworth on a quiet afternoon or late at night, recalling their pure love and her compromise back then, filled with remorse. She often wondered if she had not listened to those persuasions back then, if she had been a little braver, would everything have been different? Would she have the happiness she wanted now? As for Wentworth, after being rejected by Anne, his heart was filled with hurt and resentment. He did not understand why the girl who had once been so happy with him could be so easily persuaded by others and give up their love so casually. Carrying this hurt, he resolutely devoted himself to the naval career. He vowed to make achievements, to become wealthy and decent, and to make those who had once looked down on him, including Anne, regret it. In those 8 years, with his courage and wisdom, he made numerous military achievements in the Napoleonic Wars, rising from an unknown soldier to a respected and decent naval captain, with sufficient wealth and social status, becoming the object of admiration for many noble young ladies at that time. He was no longer the ignorant and impulsive young man he used to be. He became calm, introverted, even a little cold. He wrapped his heart up, no longer easily believing in love or giving his sincerity. The gears of fate always turn inadvertently. 8 years later, because of Sir Walter Elliot's extravagance, the Elliot family's financial situation became increasingly dire, and they were already living beyond their means. They had to rent out their ancestral estate, Kellynch Hall, to make a living, and the people who rented Kellynch Hall were none other than Captain Wentworth's sister, Mrs. Croft, and her husband, Admiral Croft. This news threw Anne into great shock and panic. She never thought she would meet the man she had regretted for 8 years in such a way. She was both looking forward to it and afraid. Looking forward to seeing him again, but afraid to face him. Afraid to face her compromise and hurt back then. Afraid that he had long forgotten her, and afraid that he would treat her with indifference. At the moment of their reunion, Anne's heart almost stopped. She looked at Wentworth in front of her. He was more mature and upright than 8 years ago, with the dignity and calmness of a naval captain. But the passion and tenderness in his eyes were gone, replaced by a sense of distance and coldness. When Wentworth saw Anne, there was a fleeting flicker of emotion in his eyes, but it was quickly covered by coldness. He deliberately avoided her gaze, as if she were an irrelevant stranger. Even in social occasions, he deliberately lingered around several young, beautiful, and wealthy young ladies, ignoring Anne completely. Anne's heart ached like it was pricked by a needle. She knew this was Wentworth's revenge on her, his punishment for her giving up their love so easily back then. She watched him smile gently at others, watched him chat and laugh with them, and her heart was filled with bitterness and remorse. She wanted to walk up to him, apologize, and tell him about her 8 years of regret and longing. But she had no courage. She was afraid of being rejected, afraid of being mocked, afraid that her apology would be nothing but weak excuses in his eyes. She could only stand aside silently, watching him, silently enduring the pain and torment in her heart. During that time, Anne's life became even more oppressive. On one hand, she had to face Wentworth's indifference and distance, bearing the bitterness and remorse in her heart. On the other hand, she had to deal with the pursuit of her hypocritical cousin, William Elliot. William Elliot was Sir Walter Elliot's nephew and the heir to the Elliot family's title. On the surface, he was elegant and graceful, showering Anne with attentions, but in reality, his attentions hid an ulterior motive. He knew that Sir Walter Elliot had the idea of remarrying, and if Sir Walter Elliot remarried and had a son, he would lose his right to inherit the title and the estate. So he pursued Anne only to curry favour with Sir Walter Elliot, prevent him from remarrying, and ensure that he could smoothly inherit the title and property. Anne knew clearly about William Elliot's hypocrisy. She had no affection for him at all, even felt a little disgusted. But she could not refuse directly. She knew that her current situation did not allow her to do as she pleased. She needed to take into account the dignity of the family and her father's feelings. So she could only reluctantly cope with William Elliot's pursuit, watching his hypocritical smile and listening to his perfunctory love words, feeling exhausted and helpless. She often wondered, would her life always be like this? Would she spend the rest of her life in regret, remorse, and helplessness? Watching Anne cope with William Elliot, Wentworth felt an inexplicable irritability and jealousy in his heart. He had originally thought that he had long put aside the hurt from back then and forgotten Anne. But when he saw Anne walking with William Elliot and saw how attentive William Elliot was to her, a trace of bitterness still welled up in his heart. He began to unconsciously pay attention to Anne, to her every move, to her joys and sorrows. He found that Anne was still the gentle, kind, and intelligent girl she used to be. But there was more vicissitudes and tiredness in her eyes, more forbearance and helplessness. He began to reflect. Was he too impulsive back then? Should he have given Anne more understanding and tolerance? He gradually realized that Anne's compromise back then was not only because of the persuasion of others, but also because of her own cowardice, her sense of responsibility to her family, and her fear of the future. An accident in Lyme Regis became a turning point in their relationship. That day, Anne, Mary's family, Wentworth, and several relatives and friends went to Lyme Regis for a trip. Mary's young son, Louisa, was lively and impulsive. On a whim, she wanted to jump down the steps and let Wentworth catch her. Wentworth had no time to stop her, and Louisa fell heavily to the ground, unconscious on the spot. Everyone fell into panic. Mary burst into tears at a loss. The others were also flustered, not knowing what to do. At that moment, Anne stepped forward. She was not flustered or at a loss. On the contrary, she was extremely calm. She quickly walked to Louisa's side, carefully checked her injuries, and then arranged everything in an orderly manner. She told someone nearby to go for a doctor, told Mary to calm down, comforted everyone's emotions, and even carefully straightened Louisa's clothes, staying by her side without leaving. At that moment, Anne seemed to be glowing. Her calmness, courage, thoughtfulness, and sense of responsibility moved everyone, and also made Wentworth re-recognize her. Wentworth stood aside, quietly watching Anne, watching her handle everything calmly, watching the firmness and tenderness in her eyes. The ice in his heart gradually began to melt. He thought of the gentle and cowardly Anne from back then, of her helplessness and struggle, of his own obsession and coldness over the past 8 years. He suddenly realized that his revenge over the years was not because of hatred, but because he could not let go, could not let go of their love back then, could not let go of the girl who had made his heart flutter, could not let go of the regret in his heart. He also realized that Anne's compromise back then was not because she did not love, but because she was too sensitive, too cowardly, too concerned about the opinions of others, and too eager to take care of everything. After Louisa woke up, she was not in danger of losing her life, but she needed to rest quietly. Anne stayed in Lyme Regis, taking good care of Louisa and accompanying her. During that time, Wentworth also came to see Louisa often. In fact, he mostly wanted to see Anne. The atmosphere between them gradually eased, no longer as distant and cold as before. They would occasionally say a few words, occasionally look at each other. Although they did not mention the past, both of them had different emotions in their hearts. A glimmer of hope gradually emerged in Anne's heart. She could feel Wentworth's change, feel the tenderness and concern in his eyes. She began to pluck up the courage to tell him about her regret and longing over the past 8 years, to fight for her own happiness. But she was still hesitant and afraid that her compromise back then had completely hurt him, afraid that he would never forgive her, afraid that they could never go back to the past. After a period of inner struggle and reflection, Wentworth finally let go of his obsession and resentment. He realized that he still loved Anne deeply and still wanted to be with her. He no longer deliberately disguised his emotions, no longer deliberately treated Anne with coldness. He began to take the initiative to approach her, to care for her, and to express his deep affection in his own way. On a quiet night, Wentworth finally wrote a sincere love letter and gave it to Anne. In the letter, he poured out his longing and obsession over the past 8 years, his hurt and resentment back then, and his deep affection and expectations now. He wrote that he had once felt resentment because of being rejected, once wanted to take revenge, wanted to make her regret it. But when he met her again, saw her forbearance and helplessness, saw her calmness and courage, he realized that he had never really let her go. He forgave her for her compromise and cowardice back then, and also forgave himself for his impulsiveness and paranoia. He only hoped to have a chance to return to her side, make up for the regret of the past, and spend the rest of his life with her. Holding the letter, Anne couldn't help but burst into tears. The 8 years of regret, the 8 years of remorse, the 8 years of longing, all found their home at this moment. She read every word in the letter, feeling Wentworth's deep affection and sincerity, her heart filled with emotion and joy. She finally plucked up the courage to respond to Wentworth's confession. She told him that she had also been thinking of him for the past 8 years, always regretting her compromise back then, and always longing for a chance to be with him again. She apologized to him for her cowardice, for her compromise, for the hurt she had caused him. The two people who had gone through 8 years of hardships finally resolved their grievances and got back together. Their reunion was not earth-shattering, but full of the tenderness and firmness precipitated by time. Their love was not as passionate and impulsive as when they were young, but full of the stability and deep affection of a long-flowing stream. When Lady Russell saw Anne and Wentworth rekindle their relationship, saw Wentworth's maturity and sense of responsibility, and saw the smile re-blooming on Anne's face, she finally admitted her prejudice and mistake back then. She had once thought that she was doing what was best for Anne, thinking about her future, but she had ignored Anne's inner feelings, ignored the power of love, and ignored a person's pursuit of happiness. She apologized to Anne for her persuasion back then, for the regret she had brought her, and sincerely sent her blessings, hoping that Anne and Wentworth would be happy together for the rest of their lives. Although Sir Walter Elliot was still vain, he gradually accepted Wentworth. After all, Wentworth was now a wealthy and decent naval captain, enough to match the status of the Elliot family, and could give Anne a stable life. And Anne finally broke free from the indifference and oppression of her family, got rid of the label of old maid, let go of the regret and remorse from back then, integrated into the naval circle she respected, and gained the happiness that had come too late. Persuasion is never just a simple love story. It contains Jane Austen's profound thoughts on life choices, human nature, and the times, as well as the spiritual dilemmas and growth insights that each of us can understand. In this work, Austen does not shape perfect protagonists or weave a grand love fairy tale. Instead, with the most delicate brushstrokes, she portrays a group of real people. They have flaws, obsessions, regrets, and struggles, just like each of us. The core of the novel revolves around the word persuasion, but goes far beyond it. It explores the boundary between listening to others and following one's own heart, the balance between reason and emotion, and the distance between regret and redemption. Anne's tragedy was never the fault of any single person, but a product of the times, the complexity of human nature, and the lack of self-awareness. In British society at that time, women had no independent economic status and no right to make their own choices. Their marriage and life were often controlled by their families and others, constrained by social prejudices. Lady Russell's Persuasion, although filled with self-interest and prejudice, also reflected the social discipline imposed on women at that time. The value of women seemed to be realized only through marriage, only through marrying a decent and wealthy man. Anne's cowardice and compromise were not only due to her personality, but also because she lived in such an era, trapped by such discipline. She did not dare to resist, did not dare to follow her own heart, and could only give up her love and happiness under the persuasion of others. And this is precisely the spiritual dilemma we face in modern times. We live in an era of information explosion, surrounded by all kinds of voices, all kinds of persuasion, the expectations of parents, the advice of friends, social standards, and the eyes of the world. We often get lost in these voices, often constrained by what we should do and what we must do, often giving up the things we truly love and the life we truly want because we are afraid of failure, afraid of being mocked, afraid of disappointing others. Just like Anne back then, we struggle between reason and emotion, wander between listening to others and following our own heart, and often fall into endless regret and remorse after making choices. Anne's growth gives us the most precious insight. True maturity is never blindly listening to the persuasion of others, nor is it blindly pursuing reason. It is learning to listen to one's own heart, learning to find one's own direction among the complex voices, learning to grow from regret, and learning to persist in the face of struggle. It took Anne 8 years to understand this truth, to pluck up the courage to follow her own heart, and to make up for her regret. We, however, may not need 8 years. We just need to learn to clearly understand ourselves, learn to bravely face our own hearts, learn to refuse unreasonable persuasion, and learn to be responsible for our own choices. This novel also tells us that regret is not terrible. What is terrible is that we have been immersed in regret, dare not face it, and dare not change. There is never an absolutely correct choice in life, nor is there a chance to start over, but we can choose to let go of our obsessions, choose to reconcile with ourselves, and choose to follow our own hearts and bravely pursue our own happiness in the days to come. Just like Anne and Wentworth. Although they went through 8 years of hardships, although they had regrets and hurts, they finally let go of the past, followed their own hearts, and gained the happiness that belonged to them. In addition, in the novel, Austen also reflects on the class prejudices and gender inequality in British society at that time through Anne's experience, and eulogizes the courage, integrity, and sense of responsibility of the naval group. At the end of the Napoleonic Wars, the British Royal Navy made extraordinary contributions to the country. With their courage and sacrifice, they guarded the peace of the country and also changed their own destiny. Wentworth's growth is not only a personal growth, but also a microcosm of the times. It tells us that a person's origin cannot determine their future, and a person's value is not determined by their status and wealth, but by their efforts, their character, and their persistence. This point still has profound significance in modern society. We live in a relatively equal era, free from the class constraints and gender inequality of the past. We have more opportunities to pursue our dreams and realize our value. We should be more brave in following our own hearts, not constrained by the eyes of the world, not influenced by the persuasion of others, and live the life we want. What Persuasion teaches us is not only how to face regrets and choices in love, but also how to face every choice in life, how to follow our own hearts in a complex world, how to reconcile with ourselves, and how to grow from regret. It tells us that there is no useless path in life. Every choice, every regret, Every struggle is an opportunity for growth, a necessary path for us to become mature. Tonight, we finished reading Persuasion together. Finished reading The Regret and Redemption of Anne and Wentworth across 8 years, and also finished reading a story about persistence and growth. Perhaps at this moment, there is also a ripple in your heart, recalling the persuasion in your life, recalling those past regrets and struggles. But please believe that all regrets may become surprises in the future. All struggles may become the power for growth. All persistence will eventually be rewarded. Anne spent 8 years to find her own happiness, and we can also bravely follow our own hearts in our lives, gently reconcile with the world, and slowly become better versions of ourselves. No summary can replace the original work. A good book is worth reading page by page. Good night, and wish you a sound sleep tonight. I'm time for bed. If you like it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I look forward to our next encounter.